right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for being here at my TED Talk. Today, we're going to be talking about the good old-fashioned 1 to 4 family contract. Super excited about this because I know we all got a lot of questions, and this is a perfect time. Normally, when I used to be a teacher, I used to tell my kids, I was like, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And then I always told them, I said, yes, there is. And there tends to be it usually starts with the words, what if? And today is a perfect example to ask your what if questions, because that's the purpose of this. I know we all have funkiness and weirdness that goes on. And so it's a good time to ask this. But today we're going to restrict this to the 1 to 4 and the third-party financing addendum, just those two documents. I may tell you, if you ask a question, hey, there's a separate document for that. I don't want to get too far down rabbit holes because this thing can get out of hand. So if I kind of tell you this, maybe we'll get together one-on-one and discuss that later. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to do this all together as one big happy. I'm going to move that over here. Can y'all see my Dotloop screen right now? Beautiful. All right, ladies and gentlemen, 1 to 4 family contract from the very, very beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't fill them out by hand anymore. That's first and foremost. I think that should go without saying to most people. Everything I do is digital, and we have this wonderful thing, Dotloop by Showing Time. What you're going to want to do before you write a contract or send one in is come here. Inside this document, did I archive that one? We are going to add a loop. So we're going to add a loop of a property address, and I'm going to do the same thing I did last time, and I'm going to sell Eric's building at the Rise. Let's see if I can find that.
Yeah.
See.
Does anybody else want to sell it? So those of you who don't remember, if it just says Google Maps, it means I'm going to have to fill out all the information. Sometimes it'll say MLS or something similar, but that's a different video. So I'm going to pretend like I'm selling the Rise, aka White Lines World Headquarters. Somebody's not muted.
So yeah, Edmundo, can you mute yourself? Thank you.
Cool. All right. So the difference, guys, is now when you get into here, you got to do buying or selling. It doesn't really matter, but most of the time when we're writing contracts, we're on the buying side. So I'm going to go ahead and say buying side. I don't need a photo for this loop right now. But we're going to pretend that I'm writing a 1 to 4 family contract. The first thing that I want to point out to everybody is this is not the first document you should be filling out. If you are doing a 1 to 4 family contract, you should have already had an IABS assigned, and you should already have some sort of representation agreement, either buyers or whatever, exclusive right to sell. So if you do not have those two documents on file with signature, you should not be filling out a 1 to 4 family contract, not for a client. If you're doing it for yourself, that's fine. Another thing that you need to know is that when y'all probably heard the word during real estate school that these forms are promulgated. How many of y'all remember hearing that weird word, promulgated? Guys, all promulgated means is it is distributed to everybody. As realtors, we are forced to use either this form or something created by a lawyer, but this form is promulgated, sent out to the general public as well. So the general public can use this document. You do not have to be licensed to sell your own property. So for sell by owners can use this document if they want to. So just a little clarification on that, because I know a lot of people don't know what the word promulgated means, and it's dumb that they use that word, but I guess it makes sense. All right, so first thing foremost, we're not going to do autofill features. So we'll go watch the video about Dotloop earlier. All right, we're going to go through this thing line by line. Parties to this contract are, if you can see the seller, I don't know if he has it in his own name, or it's probably in some LLC, but we're going to pretend like Eric's the seller, and I'm going to buy it from Eric, okay? All right, so we got to put the buyers in here. Ladies and gentlemen, a couple things about this. Let's say it's me and my wife. You should not say Colin and Amelia Corrington. That is not how you should say that. I know it says that in the CAT a lot of times. Most title companies do not like this. They want to make sure that they know everybody has their own first and last name separately. Next thing is the property address. Ladies and gentlemen, nobody cares about the address. It's mostly a reference. I'm going to buy that. Nobody cares. The title company doesn't care. Survey people don't care. Banks don't care. Nobody cares. They care about what we call the property description, which is the lock, block, and then whatever else they put in here. A lot of times, guys, this will be listed in a listing, right? So if I go into MLS, in case anybody's wondering, where do I find that information? If it's listed, let's take my new one that I just put up. Oops. If it is listed, it is in the listing, okay? Legal description right here, NCB 1109. So just so nobody gets confused. The way I normally do this is I put the entire legal description, even though it says block and lot here, I still leave it in this section. I put the block here, lot here. So obviously that's off a different one. If you're going, Colin, this isn't in the MLS, or I don't think that's right, you can go to the CAD. Just type the name of the county and type CAD. It shows up every time. And I'm going to do, let's see if I can find this one. Come on. So it's owned by BES Strategic Investments. I was right. So it's not technically that. But when I go in here, look at this legal description. This is perfect. Colin, man, this legal description has a lot of nonsense in it. This is exactly why I put the entire legal description in here, and I do my best to fill this part out. Counties vary, different areas of town vary. I've seen where they don't have a lot, they don't have a block. It just has, sometimes they just ramble. It's like such and such city, and it doesn't make any sense. That's why you want to put this whole thing in here, because you're probably going to screw these two up. So take the entire legal description, always put it in here, and then separate those two if you can. In the city of, well, this happens to be in Seguin, Texas, in the county of, which is great, known as, and this is where you put the address, South Austin Street. Now, I don't need to put the city, Seguin. I don't need to put the state, because obviously this is a Texas form. And I don't need to put the zip code because, again, that's for postal mailing, not for identifying the property. This is used for identifying the property. So that's all I put there. If you notice in the contract, it also says, or as described on attached exhibit. That, guys, is if you have some weird bunch of land out in the middle of nowhere, and I can't really describe it well. So sometimes when you're selling land or a house way out in the middle of nowhere, it'll say, you know, the 15 acres adjacent to blah, blah, blah. If it's got some big, long description, it says right here, or as described. So what I would write in here is C attached exhibit. Colin, where do I find exhibits? Just type one up. It's not that big a deal. You can call it Exhibit A, Exhibit 1, Exhibit 752. Doesn't matter. Just go to Word, Exhibit 1, and then write out the entire description, and then just attach it to the contract. If you do that, you need to make sure that down in the bottom, you click Other, because Agreement of Parties, this contract has all of the applicable boxes. I'm going to put that in here, and I'm going to say Exhibit 1, if that's what I call it. So you want to make sure that they know that document needs to have an attachment. I'll explain that more in a minute. All right, any questions about, let's keep going. Let's get through the first page. Exclusions. For those of y'all that were in class, there's certain things that come with the property that convey, and it's always the, there's chattel, and what is the other word? Why can't I think of it? Somebody help me out. Why can't I think of that word right now? It's the stuff that's included with the house. Why can't I think of it? Chattel's not included, but it's all the stuff that's included. It's the inclusion. Somebody help me with that word. I can't think of it. It'll come to me in a minute. But exclusions, guys, are the things that are supposed to come with the property that you are plainly stating do not come with the property. I don't want that. So a perfect example was I sold a house one time, and it had this super fancy bathroom and fixtures, chattels and fixtures. There we go. So one of the things that's considered a fixture is anything that is fixed to the property, such as chandeliers. So there was a chandelier in this bathroom, just gorgeous chandelier. And the owner said, I am selling this house, but I am going to keep that chandelier. So that would be considered an exclusion. Exclusions are fixtures that do not convey. Very seldomly do you have anything in here Colin, how do I know? Again, you're going to want to go back to that listing, and somewhere on here, it'll probably say in the notes, or I think in the other one, there's actually an exclusions section. But you want to make sure that that you have the exclusions written out, or you understand that, or that's what's going on with that particular property. So if I was selling that one, I would say bathroom chandelier. Okay. And I'm a terrible speller. Sales price. All right. This is where it gets fun. Let's come up with a number. Let's say we're going to buy this thing for $1 million. And I'm using an FHA loan. How much is the down payment for an FHA loan? Anybody? What's the lowest down payment you can get an FHA loan with? There you go, 3.5% stated by Melissa through sign language. So if I'm doing a 3% down payment, I'm going to multiply that by 0.035. For those of y'all that don't remember math from high school or middle school, really, you move that decimal point over 2 places and it comes 3.5%. So my cash down payment on an FHA loan would be $35,000. Okay. Now in here, I like to make sure I put the commas and such, because it's not, that way it makes it easy to read and it populates the math. Now the way that I do this is I know that my 3.5%, but I'm offering $1 million. So I'm going to subtract $1 million, which means 965 is what I'm going to be financing through a third-party financing addendum. Okay, so I'm buying this on an FHA loan, which this will never go FHA, but who cares? $35,000 is what I'm putting down, and I'm financing this. Guys, the loan assumption addendum means I'm going to be taking over their loan. You need a separate addendum for that. And it'll tell you how much the loan is, and it's going to work the same. Like, hey, I got a loan for $50,000, but I want you to pay me $1 million, do the math. Or seller financing addendum, which means the owner of the property is going to carry the note. Again, these two are kind of specialized situations. This doesn't happen a whole lot. Most of the time you're going to do third party. And as you can see, this does the math for you. If it doesn't, just do the math. It's pretty simple. And the next part, this is actually fairly new in the past couple of years, is they want to know if there's any leases that retain with the property. So if you buy a property that somebody is renting and their lease doesn't end for 6 more months or whatever it is, you have to abide by that previous lease. I have to leave that person in place. I can't kick them out just because I bought it. They get to stay. The lease wins over transactions, okay? Same thing with fixtures. So residential leases, that's somebody renting the property. Fixture leases, guys, fixtures are things that are attached to the property. Where this becomes most prevalent nowadays is with solar panels. Are you making a payment on the solar panels? Are you making a payment on a water softener or a security system? If you have a lease of some sort with that equipment, you need to go ahead and say, yes, I need this. Natural resource leases. What if somebody's drilling for gas and oil on the property? I need to know what that lease looks like. Okay. Guys, how do I know if there's a lease on the property? You don't. There's no way to look that up. It's not documented anywhere. The only place you could possibly find that would be here in the listing in the MLS. So pay attention, read through these things, guys. Not all this stuff is on here just for fun and games. So read through and find out if there's a lease, because you're going to want to check saying, yes, there is a residential lease, and an addendum needs to be added to that. So there's more addendums. And so check it out. Addendum regarding residential leases is attached to this contract. So we're saying, hey, there needs to be more paperwork. Most of the time when you're buying and selling a house, none of this applies. So I'm not going to get into the natural resource leases. You can read that yourself. All right, page 1 done. Any questions? Page 1. Somebody, anybody? No questions.
I do have a question.
Go, Susie.
On the first page on the address, if we're like doing a contract for like a new subdivision being developed in the country, well, it's not a new subdivision, but it's fairly new. And there's a phase on it. Does that need to be in the in that third box where it says property?
This one right here.
Uh-huh.
It depends on if that's going to be how most of the time I would put it in there.
Okay, because it's like that
and
on
I
the
will
county
say,
record.
if it's like that on the county, that's why I'm saying it depends. It really depends on if it's a new one and they haven't gotten with the county yet. There's a timing game there. If the county records say phase 3, yes, put it, whatever that county record says right here in legal description, whatever that says, I don't care if it's 6 miles long, you put it in here. If it's too long,
Okay.
God dang it. I hate this stupid thing. Sorry, there's a little, I don't know if y'all can see that little thing, but it drives me crazy. So it doesn't matter. And if it's too long to fit in here, we're going to attach an exhibit. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I've had to put an exhibit, but there is no lot or block. I've done that a bunch of times. But yes, if it's in the county, yes. If you think it should be in there, put it in there. Let
If it
title
doesn't have
come
a
back to you.
block,
Yeah, if it doesn't have a block, just leave it blank. But make sure
wait,
this
do I have
part's
to
filled
put an
out.
exhibit?
No, only if it doesn't fit in here.
Oh, okay.
If you can't get it to fit in this little line right here, you're going to want it, because title's going to throw a fit. Title needs to research this information. If they don't have all of it, like if it's, like I said, 100 characters long, they won't be able to do anything. Then they're going to start yelling at you. It's better to have too much in here than too little. Okay. All right, moving on. Page 2. All right. Most people don't read this and it drives me crazy. Guys, another little thing, this is just advice from Uncle Colin, I guess. When people fill this out wrong, I honestly, I think I told most of y'all, like when we started Whiteline, I started because most realtors are idiots. And I can tell if somebody's an idiot by the way they fill this contract out. So fill this contract out properly so you look smart, so they know not to screw with you. If people fill this part out incorrectly, I know they're rookie, I know they're green, I know I could probably walk all over them when it comes to negotiation. So make sure you're filling this out intelligently. Make sure you take your time. People go through these things so quickly and it just frustrates the crap out of me. Delivery of earnest money and option fee within 3 days. Y'all know about the earnest money and option fee, right? So who am I going to deliver this to? Who is my escrow agent? Guys, this 99 times out of 100, this is your escrow officer at a title company. Okay. Do not put the title company's name here. Don't put in ABC Title Company or whatever it is. Don't do that. That is not an escrow agent. I need to know specifically who is in charge of this file. So we're going to say it's Jane Doe, whatever, it doesn't matter. So you're going to put the name of the person, the escrow agent who's in charge of that file. If you are not closing at a title company, let's say we're closing with a lawyer's office, okay? Put the name of the lawyer. It's the escrow agent. It is the person in charge of the third party, making sure that this whole transaction happens. The next thing is at their address. Where is Jane Doe's office? Okay. That you got to put in the office. I need to know where you're taking this money. Everybody needs to know. That's just basically a public declaration. How much earnest money are we going to deliver? Guys, there's no right or wrong answer, but does anybody want to share with me what the typical earnest money deposit is?
Usually 100 for 7 days.
No, earnest money shows that
sorry,
you are.
earnest money. I thought you said option money. Earnest is 1%.
Typically, it's 1%. Okay. Typically, it's 1%. If you want your offer to seem stronger, you can put more. If you're wholesaling a property and don't really want to put a lot of money at risk, you typically put less. If you're wholesaling, you want as least amount you can get away with. So, but in this is a traditional transaction. We're going to do 1% earnest money. Does anybody know what 1% of $1 million is? 10 grand. Okay. So I'm putting down 1% typically. Again, guys, it's all negotiable. That's why it's a blank. It's not fixed. Then the second question, so I'm putting down $10,000 as earnest money, and how much money am I putting as an option fee? Again, I get a lot of questions. Typically, guys, it's about $10 a day is what most people will say. Lately, I've been seeing it kind of climb higher, maybe $15 or $20 a day. So how many days do I want to have a termination option? Again, guys, that's up to you. How quickly can you get an inspector in there, get the report back, negotiate the rest of the stuff? I'd say the average is 7 to 10 days is what I would say the average is. Since this is $1 million property, I'm going to go a little bit longer. And since it's $1 million, if I say $10 a day, this might get laughed out of the room, but who cares? Typically on these bigger deals, you'll do more, but to keep things simple, we're going to just keep going like this. Okay. So I'm going to deliver $100. Oops, not there. For 10 days of option. So this box and this box coincide. Again, guys, you could do, it doesn't matter. You could do $1,000 for 2 days. You could do, it doesn't matter what you put, but typically it's $10 a day in residential transactions or more. You can negotiate, they'll fight about it. Next thing is buyers shall deliver additional earnest money to the escrow agent, who is Jane Doe, within blank days of this. Most of the time, folks, I don't do additional earnest money. These are usually large transactions where you're going to do that, where I put $10,000 now, and I'll put $10,000 again after my termination period is over. So I'll say on the 11th day, or let's say the 15th day, just to show that I'm really serious about it. Okay. Most of the time, guys, I don't put anything in this box. If I don't put anything in this box, I will put NA, so nobody can fill something out in there without me knowing, right? Just kind of CYA. Moving on page 2, the next question, I'm not gonna, y'all can read all this, but on the title policy and survey, title policy is the insurance on the title. Who is paying for that? You're gonna hear me say this 7,000 more times. It's negotiable. Typically, the seller pays for that. Typically. The reason why is because the seller is offering up their property, and I'm going to go ahead and defend the fact that I have the right to sell it. So I would say typically the seller pays for this. Not always, depends on what you want to do. Colin, how much is title insurance? Great question. There is a formula. By the way, guys, title companies, Texas title insurance calculator. Guys, you can go to these calculators and you can figure out roughly what it's going to be. Okay. There is a formula to figure this out. There you go. Texas premium rate. Here's your formula right here. If it's less than $100,000, here's the amounts. If it's over $100,000, step 1, take the column range, multiply by this, add this, do this number, divide by that, and it'll tell you what your rate is. Guys, title insurance rates do not vary. One title insurance company is not going to sell you cheaper title insurance than the other title insurance company. It is standard by the state of Texas. So it's the title insurance is standard. You're not going to save money. If somebody goes, well, they charge less. No, they don't. They never do. So, and then again, the title policy by the title company, I never put it up here. I put a name. So let's say she works for ABC Title. Okay. So you're going to want to put which title company. Again, guys, if you are closing at a lawyer's office, you're going to need to find somebody to issue title insurance. So again, that kind of complicates things, but whatever. Now for this next part that nobody knows what it means. Section 8 of our section 6A8. Nobody ever seems to know what this means. Does anybody want to know, make a guess of what this means? Is anybody confident? Nobody? Okay. So when you buy title insurance, they are ensuring that the property is yours to sell. Inside the title insurance, they give 4 different schedules: Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule C, Schedule D. Schedule D doesn't mean anything to you. Schedule A doesn't mean anything to you. You're worried about B and C. I remember this because C stands for Colin. These are the reasons this whole thing is going to go to crap, because I tend to make messes of things. Okay. So we will not insure it until all of the stuff in Schedule C is corrected. So that's where you'll find he owes back child support, he owes this, he owes that, blah, 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 blah. Those are the reasons we will not issue it. All of those conditions must be met in Schedule C. Schedule B are the things that we will insure the property, but if anything in Schedule B happens, we're out. Okay, like you got to read through it. I'm not going to go through it. So Schedule B, those things will stick. Schedule C has to be cleared up before we close. So on Schedule B, this is what this is talking about. The standard printed exception as to the discrepancy, conflicts, shortages in area, boundary lines, encroachments, and protrusions, and overlapping improvements. So in Section B, there will be a line that talks about this specifically has to do with boundary issues. Okay. If you want to ensure certain things on your boundary, like if you know there's a weird encroachment that might cause a problem, or if you know something like that, you can buy additional insurance. So it's more than your standard title policy. So go ahead. So this first one says, go ahead and leave it in there. I'm not worried about it. Okay. If encroachment comes up, I'll take care of it on my own. I don't need additional insurance. This button will meet shortages in the areas. It will be amended. And who's paying for the extra insurance for that? Okay. Again, it's negotiable. Who typically pays for it? This is where people tend to get in arguments over weird things. Again, I try to push it to the seller if I'm repping the buyer. If I'm repping the buyer, I try to push it to the seller, right? How much is it, Colin? It varies drastically. You'll need to talk to title about that. But again, guys, this is only boundary issues. If you have a standard house in the middle of a subdivision, in the middle of somewhere, which 90% of our things we do are, then don't worry about it. Just take that off, okay? You're not worried about it. I'm sure everybody's heard that story about Eric who had a mobile home encroaching on something. That's when you need that stuff. All right. Any questions on page 2? Nope. Beautiful. Love it. Moving on. Page 3, survey. Guys, y'all know what a survey is? Piece of paper shows you where your property is. Okay. This is where, again, where a lot of people screw up, and I got to read this one really slowly. The rest of this is going to go fast. These first few pages are slow. All right. We're going to need a survey. You only need a survey, if you have a third party involved. Banks are going to want to look at the survey. If you're paying all cash, if I'm just paying $1 million cash, maybe you don't need a survey. You really don't. I mean, it's not legally required. It'd be stupid not to. But if you don't want a survey, you just leave all this stuff blank. That's dumb, in my opinion. I would never buy a property without a survey. But so these 3 things are what's really important. And this first one, everybody screws up in their career at one time or another. So listen carefully. Again, how many days? Within blank days of the effective contract, I typically say 5. The seller shall furnish to buyer and title company your existing survey and a T-47 affidavit. Make sure there's no misunderstood words. A T-47 affidavit just is basically saying, I promise I did not change anything on the survey. I haven't put any new structures in. I didn't move the fence, whatever. Okay. So I only check this box if I know they have a survey. Colin, how do you know if they have a survey? Well, if I'm on this, I come over to additional information and I look at these documents. Here's 100%, seller's disclosures, lead pays. I don't see a survey here. If I don't see a survey, my next phone call is going to be to the listing agent. Yo, Colin, do you have a survey? Yes or no? If he goes, yeah, we do. Sorry, I haven't uploaded it. Cool, get it to me later. That's what this is all about. Because what people don't realize is this next sentence. It's bolded and nobody reads it. If seller fails to furnish an existing survey within the time prescribed, the buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller's expense no later than 3 days. So if you click this, the seller is automatically going to get you a new survey if they don't produce one. So when you check this box, you are checking that the seller is going to either give you the one they have or buy you a new one. That's what that means. Now, the next sentence, if they do provide a survey, if the existing survey, if they provide it, and it is not acceptable to the title company or the lender, for some reason somebody goes, I hate this survey, I want a new one. Who's buying a new one? The buyer or the seller. That's only if it is not acceptable. If they fail to produce it, the seller is automatically buying you a new one. The seller is automatically buying you a new one. If you have to get a second survey, that's what this question's about. So make sure you read this carefully, guys, because I can't tell you how many people get burned by this because, oh, I thought if I clicked this, the buyer had to get it because they couldn't find one. Nope. It says the seller will pay for it. It's only if it's not acceptable. So this is kind of a confusing paragraph. Read it carefully. Now, these next two are just flat out and simple. Like usually I do a little bit longer. Within 10 days, the buyer will obtain a new survey, or within 10 days, the seller will get one. This is saying these two right here say, I don't want your old survey. I don't care if you have one. I don't care if you don't. I don't care. We're getting a new survey. That's what these two mean, and just who's paying for it. This one means, hey, look, give me your old one. All right. Any questions about this section? Because I know that's kind of confusing. A lot of people miss this thing up. Guys, my advice is every time you see something in bold, read it carefully because you're going to screw that up. Next thing is objections. Colin, what are objections? Well,
Colin, sorry, I do have a question. So if they're not getting a survey, is it okay for them to put a big old X?
No, you are not supposed to. What she's asking is, can I just X this part of the contract out? That's a really bad idea because it's not very clear. Susie asked that question because kind of cowboy Wild West doing investors like, hey, I just don't need a survey, and they'll X that part out. However, title companies, legal, nobody, if you ended up in a court battle over something, like they see a big old X over it, no, that's not acceptable. If you're like, I don't need a survey, you can just literally leave all of this blank. Okay, if you leave all of this blank, it just means that there's no survey being considered. You can do that, but don't put a big X over it, guys, because inevitably you're going to draw some line into objections a little bit or something, God only knows. But no, don't do that. Just leave it blank. Good question, Susie, because I've done that before too, and I found out from somebody that is wrong. All right, moving on to sorry, what's up?
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm it. I see a lot of agents do that and they can't go back and change it after the fact, but
that's the problem. Like, how would you amend a contract to say, never mind, I do need a survey, please ignore the giant X? You know what I mean? It's that's why you can't do that. You can't change the contract if that happens. Plus, you are not allowed to modify this contract in any way, and putting a big X on that is modifying the contract. So you can't do that. Objections. So objections. This means I can back out of this contract. Buyer may object in writing to defects, expectations, encumbrances to title disclosed on the survey other than item 6A1 above, blah, 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 commitment, or which prohibit the following use or activity, which usually comes from the deed research. So if during the process of buying this property, I'm going to get a survey and I'm also going to receive deed restrictions. Oh my God, I've sold so many houses and never gotten a deed restriction, because there's probably not deed restrictions. Okay. There's probably pretty simple, but there are some weird things that are restricted on the deed. Like if I buy this property, you are not allowed to ever in the history of the world put cattle on it, right? Let's say that is a deed restriction. It sounds weird just because I was talking to Matt earlier about it's on my brain, but let's say I cannot use it for cattle. If I knew I'm buying this property to raise cattle, to hold livestock, you would put on here, hold livestock. If that's what I'm doing with this property, if my intention is to buy it so I can put livestock on it, I need to put that if I can't do that, I can object to this contract. That's a pretty random one, but that's for land. Let's talk residential stuff. Let's say I'm buying this house because I really want to put a daycare in there. Like I love the neighborhood. I think they need a daycare. That's why I'm buying this house. you would put in there daycare, operated daycare. Okay. You should always put something in this box. Colin, they're just buying the house to live in it. Perfect. Residential use. Okay. Because if something comes up, like in the deed, this is a beautiful house, but in the deed restriction, it says, however, nobody can ever live in there permanently. I know it sounds stupid, but weird things come up. You got to put something in here, guys. Typically, I just write residential use if somebody's just buying it. Okay. If you have other plans, you need to put that in there, because if you find out that you can't live in it, or you can't run a daycare, or you can't run cattle on it, then you're not going to want to buy it anymore. And if you back out of the contract past the termination period, you're going to still owe that $10,000 in earnest money. If you put this objection in here, you get your earnest money back. And how many days? So buyer must object earlier of the closing date or 5 days before. So you got to put a day in here. It's whichever one is earlier. After the buyer receives the commitment, exception documents, and the survey. So once I get all three of those documents, I have 5 days to decide if I'm going to back out of this or not. So always put something here, guys. I think it's foolish not to. And let's say I'm buying this thing, and I'm going to make Eric buy me one. All right. Don't worry about the rest of the page. Oh, wait, stop. One more thing. Title notices, membership of the Property Owners Association. Is this in an HOA, a POA, anything like that? So I happen to know this one is not subject to a mandatory property. Okay. By the way, guys, also notice it says mandatory. There are optional HOAs. If it's in an optional HOA, it is not in a mandatory HOA. So you would say it's not mandatory, right? So they're only worried about mandatory here. All right, questions, comments, concerns about the survey, objections, and or HOA stuff. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Hopefully it's because I'm explaining it so well. Beautiful, onward, page 4. This is gonna go faster now. Page 4, Tidewater. Don't worry about it, unless you can read through this, but obviously we can't change anything, right? Most of this stuff just says, if it happens to be here, you gotta fill out the form. That's what it says, over and over and over again. If you know there's propane gas in the area, read this, guys. I'm not gonna go through it all though. Required notices. This is, the world's getting trickier and trickier and trickier. If you are in a separate mud, I don't even know what that is, or a PID, you have to put notice in here. The following notices have been given or attached to this contract. MUD is a managed municipal utility district. So if they've got water it's basically owned by the subdivision. A PID is a public improvement district. That is, again, it's a form you got to fill out. How do I know, Colin, if any of these are applicable? All right, that's a great question. And it's a little tricky, but I'll show you how to do it. Number one, check the MLS listing. Read through the remarks, agent remarks, read through the thing. All the MLSs are a little bit different, but read through this and see if it's in here. This one's not, so it's not going to be in here. The second thing I would tell you to do to find out if it's in a PID or a MUD or anything like that is go to the taxing jurisdictions in here. And you will see these line items one after another. All right. What you're looking for is anything that says district. That's what I look for. Okay. So as you can see, there is, because those are all taxable items. That's why people are worried about this. Am I buying this house that's going to be taxed higher than every other house in the county? And if it is taxed higher, you need to tell me, because that is a decision that I need to make. Am I willing to pay extra taxes? So first thing is, look on the MLS listing, check the additional documents for anything on that, because there are disclosures you got to put in. And if you don't see it there, check one more time in the tax office and make sure that they don't have you'll see it in municipal utility district, PID, right? You'll see them in here if they're in there. And if they are, you need to just write in here, I need the PID, right? Notices have been given about the PID, and the PIDs all have names. You'll see when you get there. Guys, honestly, this is pretty rare, but it does come up. Does that make sense to everybody? Did I explain that well?
Yes. Hey, Colin, I have a question. Would
Yeah.
lenders be looking for that? Because you know how they're taking into consideration DTI for taxes? Wouldn't
Yep.
they be looking for that also?
That is 100% correct. And that's why, because remember, this document, the 1 to 4 family contract, starts the entire process for everybody. The lender can't do anything until you've got an agreed upon contract. And when the contract's agreed upon, the underwriter is going to check everything that I just showed you. So the last thing you want to do is find out that there's a PID 3 days before closing, because then that whole thing's going to come screeching to a halt. So do your homework on these things. It's kind of irritating, but you get used to it. What I do, guys, is most realtors are idiots. I've said that 100 times. Most people don't put that information in there. They don't even ask the question. Be smarter than them. Ask the question. What I always do is check the tax records. And by the way, make sure you're in 2023 and not a previous year, because sometimes PIDs are new and they just happened last year, right? So you want to make sure you have the most recent year. All right, moving on. Seller's disclosure notice. Guys, you should know what that is. That came with rules. That was day one, right? I have received it. Well, Colin, I'm just filling it out. How'd you receive it? Because, guys, right here, sometimes they add it to the listing. It's already in here. I got the seller's disclosure right here. So go ahead and print that out, put it in Dotloop, whatever you got to do. But I have received it if it's in the listing. I have not received it. Buyer's not received it yet. And you have. Guys, I usually keep this pretty short. I usually don't go more than 5 days personally. Again, you can put in 300 days for all I care, but keep it short, because that's going to make a decision. In my opinion, it needs to be within the termination option period. If you have 7 days for the term option, I want 5 days for the seller's disclosure. And if you have to put this in, guys, make sure you put this in your calendar so you don't forget. So I need it. You got 5 days to give it to me. Buyer may terminate this contract if you have not given it to me. And the last one is the seller is not required to furnish the notice under Texas Property Code. Let's check who paid attention in class. Can anybody give me an example of why somebody would not have to provide a seller's disclosure? Nobody's got one?
Death?
There's like 7 reasons, I believe.
There's 6 or 7 reasons. She said death, which is more correctly is the estate. If you're buying it from the estate doesn't know if the roof leaks. Nobody's ever lived there. Is not occupying the property a reason to not provide a seller's disclosure? No, it is not. Guys, I own a bunch of rental properties that I have never lived in. If I decide to sell one, I still have to fill out a seller's disclosure. It's going to be kind of crap because I don't know anything about it, but I'm going to do my best. So guys, there are 6 reasons. What is it? Reasons not to fill out. If you forget, guys, I Google this stuff all the time. Oh, we were talking about death the other day. So that's probably what came up. Exceptions to seller disclosures in Texas. Perfect. If somebody dies, what you put on there, guys, look up the different reasons. Estate is probably the most common if it's an estate. Somebody died and we're buying the house from the estate. Seller's disclosure for law. So let's say I have received notice for this purpose. Any questions about the seller's disclosure? It is required, guys. Don't lie. Fill it out. Make sure they sign it and understand what they're reading. All right, next one. I love this one because I get a lot of questions about this. But Colin, they said they'd fix the roof and it says I said I accept the property as is. Guys, I still want the inspection and I'm scared that something's wrong and I don't want, guys, I'm buying the property as is. When you fill out an amendment, you're basically you're changing it to this section. When you fill out the amendment, I almost always put buyer accepts property as is, because as of earlier, I've got 10 days to terminate for any reason. So I'm going to get my inspection. And if I decide I need things fixed, I'm going to fill out an amendment that essentially mirrors this. However, let's say you get to the house, you love the house, but there's a back deck that has a huge hole in it, and that needs to be fixed. Like, I will not buy it unless that's fixed. Fine. We're going to put that in there, and you type in whatever it is, repair back deck to current city standards, right? I always put something like that. that means I know without a doubt in my mind, you're going to have to fix that before we go. If you're like, oh, I think something's wrong with the property, but I want to get it inspected. If that's what you're doing, guys, just say you accept it as is for now. We can change it later. You've got 10 days to change this dot right here. Does that make sense? And if you notice, I said, and when I wrote mine out, I was like, repair back deck to current city standards. Don't do subject to inspection, guys, that do not identify specific repairs and treatments. Be specific here. I need you to fix this. Colin, there's 15 things we want fixed. Fine. See Exhibit 2 and then attach Exhibit 2.
Hey, Colin,
Questions
on that
about
one,
that, guys?
I
Yeah.
do have a question. So let's just say
Mhm.
that you go into a house, right? And you've made an offer, you check the buyer accepts the property as is. If we go back during inspection and we notice that the seller punched all these holes in the wall, would that allow us to get out of the contract?
When?
After we submitted a 1-4 contract, like after we've already put in an offer and they've accepted the offer. If we go back, right, 2 days later after they accepted our offer and they punched all these holes in the wall, wouldn't that like be an out for us?
That
Under that
right there,
section?
that'd be the termination. I would do termination option at that point right there. So I'm within my 10 days. So I'm out.
Or like if we're out of the option period, I guess.
If you're out of the option period,
Uh-huh.
guys, that's why
And
there's
they-
another form called the seller's walkthrough and acceptance. That's going to be there. Now, if they have done damages to the property intentionally during that
Yes.
time period, that's a whole legal question. Like that's going to get legal because that's not covered in this contract anywhere.
Okay.
Now, but to answer your question, that is why we do the seller's walkthrough and acceptance. That's another form. You have to do it in order to get paid. And typically you do that like the day before or the day of closing to make sure they don't do crap like that. So, and if you do it outside the termination option, they're going to want to withhold the earnest money. It's going to turn legal pretty quick. The contract that we're talking about does not have any provisions for that, especially this section. So if somebody does that, you need to call me or Eric because it's going to get ugly quick. Yeah, it is because the contract's not going to stipulate that. You're going to get into this big fight about whether or not the earnest money is retained, and it's just going to get ugly. I'm sure there is a precedent. I've actually never dealt with that, which is weird. I've dealt with some small things where I'm like, God dang it, they broke the door, or they, moving the couch out, they jacked up the door. Typically I let that stuff go, or I'll put in there, hey, can you go repaint this because we're not going to close until you do. Most people want their money from the sale. They're not worried about gaining your interest money. So very seldomly does somebody go, oh yeah, my bad, I'm not going to fix it. If they're just like, hey, screw you, just don't close and go legal on them. Because remember, you have to sign the release of earnest money. And if you don't sign it, then it just drags out. So you get lawyers involved until you're happy. So if that happens, yeah, that's an ugly situation. The contract does not stipulate anything for that. Hopefully that answers your question, even though it's a bad answer.
It did. Thank you.
Next one, guys, that we have to fill out is the residential service contract. Guys, that is a home warranty. For those of y'all that don't know, it is a good practice, especially if you're representing the buyer, to add a home warranty into the contract. What is a home warranty? There are third-party companies that are outside of this transaction that will warranty pretty much basically mechanical stuff, the HVAC, the garbage disposal, your washing machine, your refrigerator, pools, things like that. They're all different. They're all going to go in there. If I'm representing a buyer, I typically put in a service contract. How much do they cost? It depends on the size of the house, different things like that. Usually $650 right now should cover just about the cost of 1 year of pretty much any residential service contract. If you know you're buying a really big house, you need to go shop this with a couple of providers. And guys, how do I find them? They're everywhere. They're everywhere. There's a billion of them. I mean, you just 10 best home warranty companies. I mean, just pick one. Guys, another thing that I will say about this is home warranty companies, can legally and will try to pay you for referring them. I do not accept those payments from those companies personally. Guys, at best, it's going to be 50 or $100. To me, it's not worth it. I have never known a home warranty company that has not pissed off my client. Every home warranty, you're going to make a call. They're going to come out and fix your garbage disposal, which means they're going to put some bubble gum and baling wire on it, and it works again, and then they leave, and they're going to irritate you. So it is a good idea to have one, because if I put it in here, the seller is paying for it, not my buyer. So if I can get it for free for my buyer, I'm going to do it. If I'm representing the seller, if I'm representing the buyer, sorry. If I'm the seller, I'm not going to put that in there because I don't want to spend $650 and see if I can get away with it. But that's what it works. Does anybody have any questions about this section right here? Because that is a little squirrely. All right, cool. Section 8. This is very important for white line. Very, 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 very important. Very important. If you are selling a property that you own, that your mom owns, some close relative, right? It's all listed right here. If you own more than 10% of the LLC that is selling it, you have to disclose it. This is where that happens. Well, Colin, I'm representing the buyer. How the hell would I know if they do that? It is in here. So when you do, make this go away. This is Sabor, obviously. But if you notice right here, there's this section. Owner is a licensed real estate agent or licensed real estate broker. That is the only thing that you can find that information on. Not the only way, but it's the only way I would do it in the contract. Okay, so no. If the answer is no, leave it blank. If the answer is yes, you need to put something in there. What do you put? What I usually put, the selling agent is a member of the owning of the selling agent is a member of the selling LLC, if it's in my LLC. If it is seller is the mother of the selling agent. You have to disclose it, guys. And you need to put it in plain English. Don't try and hide anything. Just very simply put. If you're selling your own property, you got to put it in there. If you're selling one of your rentals, you got to put it in there. If you're selling a flip, you got to put it in there. Guys, if it's your property in any way, you got to put something in there. Questions about that section? Because that's important. Cool. Closing. Guys, typically a month is pretty standard right now. It used to be 45 days, typically a month. The faster, the better. You should know if, Colin, I'm green, I have no clue. Put a month, okay? If you're really scared about that, call the loan officer and say, hey, how quick do you think we can close this? What should I put as the closing date? And they should be able to tell you. Another advice on this one, guys, is make sure you don't book this. I do this all the time and it makes me mad. That's why I'm telling y'all, don't book it on like Labor Day. I do that all the time. Like I inevitably put it on some day that the title company is closed. And then I have to fill out an amendment. So just look out so you can save yourself some time. All right. Closing date, ask the loan officer or put roughly a month, 45 days. The sooner you can close, the better, but usually. So, all right, possession. When does my buyer get to get the keys? 99 times out of 100, it's upon closing and funding. Should they move in early and need to get the keys sooner, you need to have a temporary residential lease form. So, hey, they're going to move in on the 10th, but we're not closing till the 5th. You need to do that. Colin, do you do that a lot? More often than you think. I'd say probably 1 out of every 15 contracts, I'd say. Because y'all know the game. As soon as I sell one house, I got to move the other house. There's always a timing issue with that. And that's why this is in here. 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, I'd say closing and funding. Does everybody understand what those two differences are? All right. Special provisions. Man, this section right here gets more agents in trouble than any other section on this contract. Okay. Like I told Susie earlier, you are not allowed to modify this contract in any way, such as putting an X on it or striking lines like, oh, I don't agree to this section. You cannot do that. All right. What you can do is add a provision. If I want to strike a line or do something like that, not for the survey, guys, remember the survey, you just leave blank. But let's say there is something very specific that I need to change in the contract or add to the contract. This is where you do it. I am not going to give you an example of what you put in here because you should never put something in there unless your broker and or a lawyer has looked at that. I'm going to say that one more time. You should never put anything in special provisions unless your broker or an attorney has looked at that. Because you are literally practicing law at this point. When you write something in a contract where you're varying this, you are practicing law, which is a big no-no as a realtor. So call me if you think you need to put something in here. Call Eric, call an attorney. I got to be honest, guys, out of the hundreds of contracts I've written, I think I've used this one time. It is very rare, very specific circumstances. And a matter of fact, I don't even put, normally when I leave things blank, I'll put that in there. That'll be all I'll put. It'd be the only thing I'd put. Settlement and other expenses. Ooh, this is going to be a hairy one. This means how much of the seller's profit is going to pay for settlement expenses. Can somebody give me another word for settlement expenses? We hear it all the time. Closing cost. Guys, we have closing cost, settlement expenses. What are closing costs? It varies by who you're talking to, but if I'm buying down points, that's a closing cost. Escrow fees, that's a closing cost. All of those things, that all the line items on a HUD that are not the purchase and sell price, those are pretty much all closing costs. Filing with the county fees, all of that stuff. There are limitations to how much closing cost you can ask for, depending on what kind of loan you're getting. I could literally talk for an hour about this stupid little box right here, and I'm not going to. I'm going to talk to you like, what did Colin do when he was a rookie and didn't know what to do? I called the loan officer. Call your client's loan officer and ask, do I need to put anything in the settlement expenses box? I do not try to calculate this. And to this day, I still do that. I don't do it. You need to make sure you talk to the loan officer, because if it's a VA loan versus an FH loan, that changes what can apply, what can't apply. I've had people that go, well, I just want $30,000 off the property. You know, I don't want to have to pay all that much, and I want to try and get a rebate. It's not how this works. That money gets specifically placed on certain things. And if your closing costs are only $8,000, then that the other 22 grand is going to stay in the transaction. It's not going to come out. So be very mindful about what you put in here. Do not put anything in here until you've talked to the buyer's loan officer. That's my advice to you. Talk to the buyer's loan officer. They will explain to you the client's financial situation, whether or not they have the cash, whether they need the cash. Guys, if you just want $30,000 off the price, you do it up here. That is not what this section's for. I see so many people fill that section out thinking they're going to get $30,000 off. And oh, look, I did it in a tricky way. They'll never catch it. No, that's not how this section works, guys. This is not a discount. It just simply means the seller is going to pay for closing cost up to whatever amount you put in there. All right. And by the way, guys, down payment, that 3.5% is not a closing cost. That's a down payment, completely separate. I want them to pay the down payment for my client. That's not where this goes. Again, talk to your loan officer. They'll help with the rest of that. Any questions about that little box right there? Cool. We'll move on. The rest of this page, blah, 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 legal. Read through it at your own leisure. This box, notices. All notices from one part or the other must be delivered, transmitted by fax or electronic transmission, which means emails, to the following. Guys, yes, so many people leave this blank and it's so stupid. Don't do that, guys. I leave, like, let's say if I'm representing the buyer, I'm not going to fill out the seller side. I mean, I might, but I probably won't. I'm going to put whatever person I'm representing's information in here. Because when I do that, that means all notices, hey, we got the deed restrictions in. They're going to email it to my client. And then they're going to, with a copy to Colin. Okay, does that make sense, everybody? Put their and by the way, you don't need their name. We're going to put their address here, or where their mailing, PO box, wherever they want this stuff delivered. I don't care. The most important, guys, is put email in here and phone number if they need to get a phone call. And this mostly goes to title, guys. This is just so title knows how to get a hold of people. Because if you just drop a contract off and they don't know who to call, they're going to be mad. This next section, guys, I guess I really want to define what the word addendum means. Addendum means we're adding something to this contract. This contract is 11 pages long. When you check one of these boxes, like such as the third party, which we're going to talk about in just a second, I've just made it 13 pages long. So we're adding to the contract. And so that way everybody knows that's why we're doing this. So the title company knows, hey, I'm missing 2 pages of this contract. Seller financing addendum, 2 more pages, right? It's going to be one or the other on that. But addendum for a property and a subject, that just added 2 more pages. So you have to check these boxes if you're adding these to them. Like I was saying earlier, guys, if you have exhibits, you need to list those here. Exhibit 1, because the property's long. Exhibit 2, because these are the exclusions. Exhibit 3, because of whatever. All right. And I think it's funny, in case y'all didn't notice, all of these are addendums. Y'all catch that? None of them say amendment. We're not this. They don't care if you change the contract. They're caring if you're making it longer. So make sure you pay attention to this, guys. And a lot of these, for those of y'all that work out on the coast, a lot of these are the coastal ones. So careful with that. Again, this is the CYA. Consult your attorney. If somebody's like, hey, I got an attorney that needs to read everything, put it in here. To be honest with you, I don't think I've ever filled that out. It's a good idea, but I've never done it because none of my clients have attorneys. And by the way, if they want an attorney, can you tell them no? If they want an attorney, you have to say, sure, what's his name and number? It's going to slow you down and piss you off, but just go with it. Last but not least, signatures, right? So make sure you assign your buyers to whoever it is, make sure their name's on here, and you send it to them for signatures. When, somebody answer this question, when do you fill out the executed date? And who fills it out?
Whoever signs
again?
last. Whoever signs last.
That is correct. Next question. Whoever signs last. If I'm filling the contract out, I'm probably going to be the first person to sign it. Then I got to send it to somebody. Don't fill it out till the second person signs, right? Mm-hmm. Second of all, if somebody sends me a contract and my client signs it, then I put the executed date in. Can the title company put in the executed date? No, they cannot. Title companies will do it. It's illegal. They are not supposed to put that date in. What does it say? Broker, fill out the acceptance. Does that mean you need to call me or Eric every time you do this? Absolutely not. You're a representative of the broker. You can do it. Don't care. But don't be the first one to fill it out. Okay. Second person fills that out. Oh, this part, I hate this part. This is part of the contract that slows me down so much. Okay. I'm buying the property. They have a selling agent. We leave it alone. Right? Fill out all the information. Whew. Broker firm, license number. Great questions. Guys, so many people screw this up too. When you click on list office, White Line Realty, you're going to get this number right here, WHLY00. That is not my license number. It is not White Line's license number. Our license number, guys, is 900-7429. Okay. Colin, where do we find that? It's really kind of a pain to find that number because that is our firm's number. What did I say? 7429, I think. Okay. It is not our office ID, which is the WHLI 00 whatever. And it's not Eric's license number. So if we go back to our IBS there, oops. It's not 597-489. That's Eric's license number. So that would go here. And then your license number goes there. Then of course your name, if you're on a team, your email address, your phone number, that's your phone number. Eric's name, his license, the 204 South Austin, the office phone number. Guys, what's the office phone number? One sec. Sorry, I'm looking for it. I have it on my phone. For those of y'all that don't know what our office phone number is, Susie, I know you knew it off the top of your head, but I found it. 210-951-3478. Write that down, people. Now, the reason this gets a little, like, I just hate filling all this stuff out. Colin, how do I fill the rest of it out? Here's what I always do. I click on the listing agent. There's all the information, agent's license number. Then when you get to the broker, you can click on that. Now you got the broker's license number, all his information. Figure that out, okay? If their address isn't in there or anything like that, you can always click on this. You can pull up their address through that one. Where it gets a little bit hairy, guys, is if sub-agent, good Lord. I'm not going to get into sub-agent. See, right now, that's going to take too long. But where it does get a little bit hairy, guys, is let's say I'm representing the seller and Matt is representing the buyer. And we are doing intermediary. We got two agents inside a white line that are doing this deal, okay? You've gotten permission from Eric. You filled out the appropriate paperwork. And now we're having two white line agents do that. That's called intermediary. But if you remember, intermediary means like that the broker is handling both sides. So we're going to put in white line here. We're going to put in that number. Now, who was the listing agent? Say Matt was the listing agent, his number, right? He's not on a team, Matt at whatever, his phone number. Eric's the supervisor, or if there's a lower supervisor, if you have a team lead, you'll put that in there. His license number, address, and all that stuff. And I'm the selling agent, the buyer, right? So then I'd put Colin in here. So if it's intermediary, everything stays on this side. If it's two different brokerages, click that one and that one, and you stop filling stuff out right here. So only this much information will be, if there's two different ones, if it's intermediary, then you have to fill out both sides of this one. Does that make sense? Intermediary is always kind of a weird concept, but most of the time, guys, you're going to be filling out this side and that side. You click top box, bottom box, fill out all the information. And by the way, don't be lazy. This is how I know if I've got a rookie on the other end of the thing. If they don't fill this crap out, I know they're lazy, because this is the irritating part. And I'm just irritated. I won't sign the contract. I kick it back to them just because I'm a brat. And the most important part of the entire contract to most people is this little section right here. Such as an MLS offer of compensation or other agreement between brokers pursuant to the previous separate agreement. What is the separate agreement? This is an agreement. This is an advertising agreement. What did I put in here? Ooh, buyer's commission, 3%. So I'm going to get paid 3% on this deal. If they offer a bonus, where is that at? 3%, and they say there's a bonus right here. See that? There's a $10,000 bonus. I'll say 3%. Oh, crap. Get over here. Plus $10,000. And by the way, guys, always put in the cents as well, because some title companies throw a fit about that. Questions about compensation?
I have one.
Yeah.
Not specific to this contract, but on the CDA itself, our CDA, where would we put a bonus? Or is that a different
Ooh.
conversation?
I think what you're going to have to do is on the CDA. Great question. I'm going to go ahead and attack that. Yeah. Maybe. God dang it. Just take me where I want to go. So when you fill out the CDA, guys, what I would do is so the commission rate and then contracted sale price. So you put 3% and it's going to calculate this. So let's say, I don't know if zeros. There you go. Yeah, that's too many zeros, but whatever. What I would do, guys. Oh, it won't let you do that. Maybe I put it in the comment section. Susie, is Susie still here? She left. Okay, since Susie's
I
not
actually
here.
had this. I had this same scenario a couple of weeks ago, and Susie had me just put the sales price where just how you did it, and I put the bonus in the comments section. That's how she had me do it.
That's what I'm thinking. I would say bonus of $10,000 total commission paid equals, in this case it'd be $40,000, right? That's what I would put here. And for right now, I think Edmundo, you asked that question. I think that's it. Put it in there for right now. Let's let Susie yell at me. You just say Colin told me.
Well, and also on the commission for the team, so that bonus wouldn't be calculated on their percentage. But it's another conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, ask Susie that question. I don't want to screw that up because she's the one who deals with all that, and I'm going to tell you wrong.
Thank you.
All right, last page of the contract, the receipts. You don't do this. You don't fill this out anywhere. All right. This is for the title company to fill out, but it does auto-populate the numbers for you. And if you notice, there's an error here. Colin, why is there an error? Well, because it's looking for a number. And when I said additional earnest money, I said, that's not a number. Okay. So it gets mad at me, but whatever. I don't care. All right. There's the contract, which is easy. And I'm going way over time, but I like that this is going. Great information. And I told you the next part about this is the third-party financing addendum. We're going to do this one real quick too. Look, street address and city. Again, guys, they don't care about the zip code. I know it sounds weird, but nobody cares. I don't care about the state either, because guess where it's got to be? Texas. All right, third-party financing addendum. How do I fill this out? Well, when I started, I would just call the loan officer. You need to call the loan officer, guys. Most of this information you can find on their pre-approval letter. Sometimes not all of it, but you need to call the loan officer. That is your first phone call on this piece of paper. Don't call me because I don't know the situation. Colin, what do I put in this box? I don't know. I don't know. The only person that knows is the loan officer. That is the only person that knows. Okay. So, but with that being said, I'm going to walk you through this. This won't take very long. First of all these boxes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all have to do with what kind of loan they're getting. Third-party financing means somebody else is going to pay for the house. It's a bank, it's whatever. Okay. Conventional, Texas Vet, FHA, VA, USDA, whatever. Conventional financing. If you notice, there's 2 checkboxes on conventional. Why? How many of y'all have ever heard of somebody doing an 80-20 loan? They get an 80%, and for the 20% down payment, they get another loan. That is a second mortgage. So that's where this would come in. Now, but for my example, remember, I said I'm going to get a $965,000 loan. So I'm going to have at least a first mortgage. Oh, remember I said I'm doing FHA, right? I'm going to do FHA in section. Ooh, who knows what section of the FHA code it is? Oh, I know what it is, but we're going to look it up anyway. FHA loan section 203B. It's right there, guys. FHA loan versus a 203K. So what does that mean, guys? FHA is owned federal, right? It's a line in the tax code. It's line 203 subsection B. Okay. If you have an FHA loan, 9 times out of 10, it's an 203B. Types of FHA loans. See, a 203K is like when you get rehab money involved in it, blah, blah, blah. Rehab mortgage, basic home mortgage is a 203B. Colin, what if I forget this? Ask the loan officer. But 99 times out of 100, section 203B. It is a $965,000 loan. It's a 30-year loan with an interest rate not to exceed, guys, whatever's on that paperwork. I don't know, whatever it says. This does confuse a lot of people. I need a loan that is amortized monthly for 30 years. So it's a 30-year loan. And I'm going to have this interest rate for the first, guys, right now there's a lot of shenanigans going on. High interest rates, maybe people are doing 2-1 buy downs, 6-5 whatever. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. If it is a fixed rate loan that will never change, then it's for 30 years. It's a 30-year loan where the rate will be that amount for the first 30 years. If you have some crazy 2-1 buy down, something, we're double back in this, blah, 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 blah. You need to talk to the loan officer. He will tell you what the answer to that question is. I can't go through every scenario. It'll take me forever. And then, what are my origination charges? Again, you need to talk to the loan officer. Most of the time, it's 1%. I've seen 1.25%. If I'm doing some crazy other kind of loan, I've seen them as high as 4%. So again, you got to talk to the loan officer. But that's how you fill out the FHA section. Texas Veteran Lands Board, I got to be honest, I've never done one of these. So my first phone call is going to be the loan officer. Conventional financing, guys, it's the same thing. Same thing. How long is the loan? What percentage? And for how long is that percentage going to stick? All right. VA financing, same exact thing. USDA, same exact thing. Reverse mortgage, I've never done one of those. So if you're doing a reverse mortgage, talk to the loan officer. Other financing, I've literally never done this either. So talk to the loan officer. Now, with all that being said, this next section is important. This contract is subject to the buyer obtaining buyer approval. Everything we filled out on the 1 to 4 can be canceled out by this checkbox. The entire 1 to 4 goes to crap if I cannot get this loan. You should I've never checked the other one. The subject is not a property. So if I can't get the loan, I'm still going to buy it. Most people can't afford that. That means you're going to pay cash. So you're almost always going to check this one. And how many days to find that out? Typically, that takes about 3 weeks to find out. Now, the reason why it takes a long time is because it's not just about the buyer credit worthiness. It's not like that. That is handled by the pre-approval letter. The house is the second part of this transaction. If the house does not meet appraised value, then we can't get a loan on it. If the house does not, if it's got flaking paint or broken windows and they say they won't lend on it and you end up with lender required repairs, that means that it's not approved unless you do that. Typically, I put about 3 weeks if I'm doing a 4-week contract. Sometimes we get in fights about this. You need to talk to the loan officer. How many days will it take us to get through this loan? What should I put here? If you are green, call the loan officer. Most of the time I put about 3 weeks in there, if you're wondering what I put. But talk to the loan officer to make sure you're safe, because you may have some crazy client that's got some weirdness that they got to iron out. It might take them 4 weeks. But talk to the loan officer. Then the last thing I want to point out is this is where a lot of people screw up. This section right here talks about whether or not the house appraises for as much as it should. If the financing described involves FHA or VA, by the way, it's only those two, it is expressly agreed that notwithstanding any of the properties of the contract purchased here, blah, 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 setting forth the appraised value of the property not less than. Guys, how much am I trying to buy this property for? $1 million. What I'm saying here is it has to appraise for $1 million. If it does not appraise, I'm out. That's what it means. Now, and it gives us a chance to renegotiate. So let's say, okay, never mind, I get my earnest money back, we're just gone, because the seller won't come off the price. Or if it comes back at 950,000, say, hey man, this thing only appraised at 950, and you got to renegotiate. If they say, yeah, we'll lower the price, great. You send an amendment that says lower the sales price. Then you redo all the rest of the stuff. But that is incredibly important. But again, I want to point out, guys, that it only says FHA and VA. What if I'm doing conventional lending and it does not appraise? If you click conventional and then fill this section out, I know you're an idiot. Because this is an FHA or VA required provision only. It does not apply to any of these other loan types. Only this one and this one, C and D. But Colin, I really want to make sure that they can get out if it doesn't appraise. Well, there's a form for that. There is a form for that. It's down here, and it is called Addendum Concerning the Right to Terminate Due to Lender's Appraisal. Okay? So if they do anything other than an FHA or VA loan, you should fill this out. I have a waiver. I'm going to waive the right to terminate the contract under 2B. I'm going to waive the right if it doesn't appraise for at least 900,000, or what most people fill out, I can cancel this contract if it does not appraise for $1 million. I can terminate this contract. Colin, how many days do I put in here? Ask your appraisal. Ask your loan officer. When do you think we'll get the appraisal in? Usually I put the same as the financing addendum. If you get into a negotiation thing, you need to talk to the loan officer and find out how long it's going to take the appraisal to get there. So that you got to put there. By the way, guys, this is an addendum. I've made the contract longer. Not even that. So now I got to go back to my 1 to 4 before I get everybody to sign it and make damn sure I have the addendum concerning the right to terminate due to lender's appraisal. I just made the contract longer. Got to check that box. So, wait, there's a chat in here. I'm sorry, I've been talking. I didn't even look. Questions, comments, concerns? That was me talking a lot, but hopefully this was helpful. I retain most everybody here, so hopefully that makes a lot of sense. The last thing I'm going to say. Okay, what's up?
I said it totally does make sense. Thank you.
Cool. The last thing I'm going to say before I let y'all all go, because I know I've been talking a lot, is read it. Just if you get to something, you're like, crap, I can't remember what Colin said, slow down and read it. I mean, it does. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Just slow down. Now, inevitably, if you slow down and read something that's a lot of legalese, you're going to get a little bit nervous, but put in what you think the correct answer is and then call somebody. You know, don't just call them, what do I put in section B? I don't know. It's very specific. I get those phone calls a lot. What do I put in this section? I don't know. The reason why you can manipulate all of this is because it changes. It 100% changes, often, frequently. So there's not just a standard canned answer for any of these things. That's why we can change them. Talk to your client, talk to the loan officer, and last ditch effort, talk to us if you can't figure these things out. But you know we're always here to help you. I don't mind the phone calls. I'm just saying, if you call me, what do I put here? I don't know. I don't know. Depends on what you're trying to do. A lot of people get mad at me because I don't know, and I'm like, I just don't know what you're trying to do. Cool. All right, well, if that's it, man, I'm gonna let you go because I'm hungry. Everybody else hungry? All right. Well, I like that y'all are all on mute, so it's not loud, but then it makes me feel like I'm alone. I'm all alone. But love you guys. Go out there, do something amazing, and hopefully this helps. Long one, but should be a good one.